So, Jonathan, Trump responded saying Biden is the worst debater ever. And he added this: I am ready and willing to debate Crooked Joe at the 2 proposed times in June and September. I would strongly recommend more than 2 debates. And for excitement purposes, a very large venue. Although Biden is supposedly afraid of crowds, that's only because he doesn't get them. Just tell me when. I'll be there. This is uncharted territory here. How would this work?
Well, I think the two sides just agree to where they want to debate. Donald Trump had basically laid out his challenge to Biden earlier, said anytime, anywhere. Biden is now saying, great, let's do it right here, right now, or in June and in September. I think the other important thing, so first of all, one important thing is it looks like this is actually going to happen. For the first time in this cycle, I think it's pretty clear that these two are going to have to debate each other.
But don't they have to agree on the moderator, agree on the rules? The Biden campaign has put out quite a few rules that seem like maybe Trump wouldn't go along with.
There are a ton of obstacles here, but after Trump said anytime, any place, I think it's hard for him to come back from that and say, well, no, not that time, not that place, not under those rules. I think we are going to see at least 2 debates between these candidates. I think the other important thing, and this is something Mike alluded to, and I'm going to put this in Gronk language, Rob Gronkowski language. These 2 candidates are basically saying, we want Bobby Jr. Right? They want nothing to do with him on a debate stage, and they want the ability to diminish him, to make voters forget about him or think that he is smaller and not a factor. And by agreeing to a debate with each other one-on-one, which both of them would like, they may be able to try to effectuate that. On the other hand, they risk a backlash if they exclude somebody that a lot of voters want.
So let's zoom in on just a few of the terms the Biden campaign laid out, that these debates should be one-on-one. The moderators should be selected by the broadcast organizations out of their regular personnel. Time limits for answers, alternate turns to speak, microphones only active when it's the candidate's turn to speak. Susan, what do you think of this proposal?
I'm not as optimistic as Jonathan is, because I've also heard former President Trump say he's going to testify at his trial. So I don't know so much that he won't come up with enough excuses, or at least agree to debate under normal circumstances, not special circumstances. Donald Trump has shown that he won't follow the rules. So the Biden campaign has put forward these rules. I think the issue of having an audience will be very sticky, as Trump mentioned in his post this morning. He wants a big arena. But the thing that's going to get him is that mic switch.
Right.
I don't know if he is going to be able to stay to a mic switch and no audience.
Yeah, Basil, do you think Trump would agree to have his mic turn off at some point?
Well, I mean, not only would it be difficult for him to deal with a mic turn off, he can't even stay at his podium, if you remember him following Hillary Clinton around the debate stage. But it's interesting when you look at the New York Times reporting on this, they talk about Biden being the institutionalist. And I think that's one of the big issues here, that someone who is so used to sort of form and tradition and promotes that in many respects is doing something so incredibly unconventional. And I guess it does warrant it, right? Because you're dealing with an unconventional opponent in a really, amazing time in our history when he's actually on trial. And I'll just add this other point. I think the timing's really important here, because in addition to this news was news that inflation seems to be easing just a little bit in this most recent period. So if you can actually do a little bit more to pick the time and place that you're debating, you might be able to catch it at a point in our economy, number one, and at a time when you can perhaps take advantage of Donald Trump just coming off of one trial. Because we're uncertain as to where the next trial is going to start.
Well,
so you can kind of capture that.
Trump has also been arguing that the debates should be held earlier than the proposed debates by the Presidential Debate Commission. Take a look at this also. The Biden campaign trying to sort of seize this moment, this announcement today saying they're selling free on Wednesday T-shirts. So when you talk about timing, Basil, what is the calculus in terms of the timing of this move to say, hey, this is what we want to do. We want to debate, and here are the things we're going to propose.
He alluded to it. Joe Biden alluded to it in the video. He said he's off on Wednesdays, right? Because, again, I think the fact that you have his opponent, and it's not like there's a primary left to be judged here. I mean, yes, but technically we know who the nominees will be. So for him to say, you know, yes, you'll be free on Wednesdays is alluding to the fact that he's on trial, that the main opponent is on trial. Just to be clear about that, so that, you know, Joe Biden can say your heels are back. Right, we have you.
Well, it seems like
in
it's
a
also
vulnerable
an
position
opportunity for Biden to get the news on
have
him
you in a
and the
vulnerable
attention
right.
on
It's
him.
right
It
right now.
also is Biden's way of just tweaking Trump. I mean, that's what the way Biden's been campaigning is taking, not the campaign, but the president himself, has been to go after little jabs at Trump, which must annoy the blank out of him. But I think that it and it probably worked
There's
in this
that
case.
T-shirt we mentioned.
Yeah, there it is, free on Wednesdays. So I think actually it was, and you can compare that to Trump's response. One is angry and mean, and one's just kind of poking a little fun. And I think that in itself tells you exactly where the campaigns are going to be going.
Jonathan, the Biden campaign is also laying out a proposal for a vice presidential debate, saying it should be in late July, right after the Republican National Convention, with the same basic parameters. Donald Trump has said he didn't want to announce a VP contender until the RNC. Take a listen.
A lot of people are in play, and I'm really a believer that you do it during the convention. You know, you really do it during the convention. I'm also, unfortunately, a believer that historically VPs, I don't think ever have helped. I think they can hurt a little bit, but they haven't helped.
Okay, so a few things we can go through there. One, you can fact check on whether they've helped or hurt for us, whether it's typical that this announcement happens at the National Convention. And then I guess the other question is, would it be enough time for a vice president contender to prepare for a debate right after this announcement?
Yeah, so first of all, there's been a range of dates that vice presidential picks have been selected. However, the tradition recently has been toward the convention. If not, it's not usually at the convention. It used to be in the old days, they basically got picked at the convention by the convention delegates. But since presidents have been able to pick their own ticket mates, that comes a little earlier. But Trump's basically right around the convention. You know, I think there is a disadvantage for the Republican vice presidential pick in having a debate right after they're picked. They would immediately have to go into debate prep. In fact, this might make him pick someone sooner if he was going to schedule a debate, because typically these candidates will be in debate prep for a couple of weeks or for most of a couple of weeks. So that is definitely Biden seeking an advantage there, both from the perspective of trying to get Trump to announce somebody earlier and from having a vice presidential candidate who might not be prepared to go up against Kamala Harris. Obviously, the Biden campaign, you know, somewhat worried about the vice presidential pick, but Trump is also right about this. It's not clear that there's any huge advantage in a vice presidential pick or disadvantage in a vice presidential pick.
Except if it happened before the president's convention, the Democratic convention, and there was something that happened in that VP debate that could really kind of throw a wrench into the celebration, if you will, of the convention.
And it may get Donald Trump to pick someone he may not like, but someone who's better at debating.
But that's assuming he expects those terms. I mean, just because Joe Biden says, I want to have a vice presidential debate in July after the convention, I mean, if I'm the other side, no matter who says that, I'm like, well, let's see what's good for me.
And I'll just say it's smart for the campaign to do this, right? Donald Trump can't campaign in the conventional way because he's on trial. He's not raising money the way he's supposed to. So all of this pushes Donald Trump into a position, if you could say this, of discomfort with respect to the campaign, because he can't do what you would normally do at this time of the year. So the advantage really is for the Biden campaign, because they're in a position of strength here.
Basil, that just brings up one other point. Donald Trump does have some experience with having his mic cut off, which is he's been sitting in court wanting very badly to respond to everything with his mic cut off. So it'll be interesting to see if he's able to do that in a debate. But he's definitely had his mouth shut over the course of the last several weeks.
Okay, well, let that be the mic drop for this conversation. Thank you so much, Jonathan Allen, Basil Smikle, and Susan Del Percio.